spiritual journey looks so much like a bed of roses, and it's not.
Say that, right? And they were like, man, like, like, hey man, I'm not perfect. You know? I'm still working on me to be able to be transparent. Because man, too often we perpetuate we are to perpetuate the perception of perfection.
You're doing good, and when you're doing for God, a lot of times what happens is that the devil throws darts in your way. And he will even sometimes trip you up to fall down, so people could look at you and be like, is that the same girl that's on the praise team singing? Is that the same guy that was playing the piano? Those type of questions arise in people's minds, especially when you're trying to do things with God. The devil tries to slip you up. But I will tell you, keep on keeping on.
Sometimes we have distorted predictions. God designed our mind to be able to process a potential outcome. That is something that other creatures don't necessarily have the ability to do. We have the ability. That is a God design. Having God's DNA in us, He gave us a fraction of who He is and His ability to see from the beginning and the end. And He allowed us to be able to project with our thoughts, what could the potential outcome be if I XYZ?
Hello, 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 and welcome again to another exciting episode of Zoom Hope Live. Well, you know, it is a new month and we have a new focus. So today, we're just happy that you are here cleaning up some homework. Please remember our website. Go to www.zoomhope.org, and we want you to follow us on our various social media platform, whether it is Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. If you're watching on YouTube, please, we're asking you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And my guy is happy because the subscriptions, they're going up slowly but surely, and we are just thankful for you. So please share the link and subscribe. Right. All right. So today we are just going to have a blast, and we want you to be involved in the process as usual. We're looking forward to hear your comments. We're looking forward to see your questions. So please share your opinions as well as your questions in the chat, and we will be looking for them, and we will be discussing them as they do come on. Well, today we're going to enjoy ourselves. It's going to be great. We have some exciting panelists who are here ready to engage in today's discussion. And by the way, we're talking about breast cancer. Yes, that's our focus. We're talking about breast cancer. And we will be looking at recovery, treatment, and healthy lifestyle. So that's our focus: recovery, treatment, and healthy lifestyle as it relates to breast cancer. Well, let me start by bringing on our first guest, and that is Andrea. So Andrea is our first guest that I want to bring on, and of course, she is one who has recovered from breast cancer. Andrea, it's good to have you on Zoom Hope Live. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. Are you hearing me okay?
Yes, I'm hearing you well. Andrina. Right.
Angelina,
Yes. So it's good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I feel good. I'm doing really well. Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
So tell quickly the Zoom Up family and also myself, my first time meeting you in person. But tell us a little bit about who you are as we go into the discussion today.
Okay, so who am I? Like I didn't have anything prepared. I wanted this to be super.
Just a nutshell.
Yeah. So I am Andrina. I'm married. I have two children. My daughter is 19 and my son is 15. So I have
Oh,
big children. Started having a family very young. I am Jamaican, but I live in Canada. I
okay.
was when I was diagnosed, I was here in Canada.
Mhm.
So I had left Jamaica in 2016 and I was diagnosed in 2019. So 3 years after moving to Canada.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. So we're looking forward to hear from you and some of that experience as we enter into the discussion. Thank you so much. All right. Well, the next person that is coming on is my very good friend as well, and she is here with one who wears a lot of hat, but of course, is one that you can trust when it comes on to your nutrition, and that is Shandira Smith. Shandira, how are you doing?
I am doing well, thanks. How are you?
I am doing great. It's so good to see you. So tell the Zoom Up family a little bit about Shandira as we enter into our discussion today.
Okay, so as you mentioned, my name is Shandira Smith.
Uh-huh.
By profession, I'm a dietitian, a licensed dietitian and nutritionist. I'm
Mhm.
also a certified diabetes educator.
Mhm.
I'm a member of the Philadelphia Seventh-day Adventist Church. And as you mentioned, I wear a lot of hats. Okay,
Yes,
so I'm involved in ASI, youth ministries, health ministries. They're my three top ministries that I presently serve in. And I am totally passionate about health. It's my desire that
right,
persons reach optimal health, a level of optimal health where they're really happy and
right.
thriving and really, really feeling good, have good quality of life.
Amen. Amen.
Well,
Awesome.
I'm not
Awesome.
not married yet, soon to be married.
All right. All right.
Really, no children as yet either, but
All
hopefully
right.
soon. Yes.
All right. All right. So we keep those on the list. Looking forward to that. All
Yes.
right. So awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Shandira. Well, the other person is a good friend of mine as well. I've gotten the opportunity of knowing him as a result of listening to his health talks. And thereafter, the rest is history. And that is none other than Dr. Tony Frankson. So, Dr. Frankson, how are you doing? Welcome to Zoom Up Live.
Thank you for the invitation, and what a pleasure! I didn't know you had such a trending program. I hope that we are the three of us here on with you. It's going to boost it right, break the glass ceiling.
Yes, I hope so. I hope so. All right. And our viewers today going to help you with that. All right. So we're looking for a couple more subscriptions. So please, you hear it from the doc. All right. So tell us a little bit about Dr. Frankson for those who might not know you.
I'm a medical doctor, and I really a community health physician. I I just love this thing called prevention.
Right.
I think it's so much easier than having to battle with diseases and curing them. And a lot of them we can't even cure. We can control them. So
Right.
that's what I really gradually moved into. And epidemiology was one of my strong areas as I did my training
Right.
after medical school, and I moved on to also health promotion, provide primary preventive care, you might call it. And I actually started out in public health with global health,
Right.
and
That's my wife's passion
and,
there.
from there I actually fell in love with it. And before I went into epidemiology and health promotion, preventive care, I actually found myself doing well on the biostatistics exams. So I said, let me do a major in that as well. So I have 4 majors in public health, and those
Awesome.
are the 4. And actually, I use all of them in different capacities,
Yes.
especially the epidemiology and the biostatistics, but
Right.
also on the programs I am enjoying using the preventive care sort of approach, as well as the reminder that the issues that we deal with are not just around us; they're actually global.
Right.
Many of them are global, and you know it really is something that we have to pay attention to locally, but while we're thinking globally, we're acting locally.
Right.
So
right,
that is
right.
me. I went to the University of the West Indies, and actually I'm teaching at the University of the West Indies as a lecturer there in those
Yes.
areas. And
Awesome.
every chance I get, I link up with people like you to
Yeah.
also get out in the community and actually strengthen your arm, as well
Right.
as
Right.
pass on some useful information that I hope, as I said earlier,
Right.
people get used towards prevention of the problem in the first place.
Awesome. All right, so we're looking forward to it. Just listening to your introduction, man, we're gonna be hot in the room today. So we're looking forward to the discussion, and we will hear from you shortly. Well, folks, you have heard from them. This is one of our favorite songs, and we chose it again. I hope you're not tired of it, but we are definitely not tired of it, right? And You Are the Cure by Kay Anthony. We chose this one because ultimately God is a cure, and He used knowledge, He used doctors, physicians, He uses natural ways, He uses faith to bring across healing. So you are the cure, and then we will enter into the discussion.
I've tried it all. My fight is more like a crow. Yeah, I've been broken and I've been hurting. Yeah, I keep searching, but self-help ain't working. Self-help ain't working. You are the cure I've waited for. You are my healing, Lord. The only hope I know for sure. Though my breath, my flesh may fail. Oh my God, you never will. You are the cure. Heaven is limitless. Revives what once was dead. I see your hand reaching, hear your love preaching, feel your breath breathing. My still heart starts beating. My still heart starts beating. You are the cure I've waited for. You are my healing, Lord. The only hope I know for sure. Though my breath, my flesh may fail. Oh my God, you never will. You are the cure. There is no cancer that will have victory, and no addiction can keep its grips on me. No fear, depression, dependence, obsession can have my heart. You have my heart. Oh, you are the cure I've waited for. You are my healing, Lord. The only hope I know for sure. Though my breath, my flesh may fail. Oh my God, you never will. You are the when the doctors say no, Jesus say yes. You're the
Right. So God is the cure, no cancer. Right? That's what the song says. No cancer will have the victory because God is the cure. And this month, Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and Zoom Up Life, we're bringing awareness to this thing. We want to deal with it, and we're dealing with it head on right away. So let's get out the park. And the first discussion point that I'd like Andrina, if you could, take us off with, is what is breast cancer, and what are some of those causes, and how does this is a mix. So just that first part. What is breast cancer, and what are some of the causes of it?
Well, I feel like since we have a doctor here, I'll let him define what breast cancer is. But I'll
Right.
just explain in layman's language what breast cancer or what a cause is, in my opinion, based on all my research, information that have been presented to me by my doctors as well.
Yeah.
So essentially, when you're diagnosed with breast cancer, they do a bunch of testing. So breast cancer has had a lot of research to back it, which is a positive thing because there are a lot of knowns about breast cancer.
Right.
So the three things that they really test for, or at least three things that they test for, are three. It's like I think it's like proteins, but essentially they're HER2, they're estrogen and progesterone. So those are essentially the three types of cancer breast cancer that usually exist. And of course, you can have something called triple negative. So it's not any of those things. So for my diagnosis, I was estrogen and progesterone positive. I was HER2 negative. So in my case, I am known, I now know, I didn't know this before, though I had a lot of different symptoms that should have told my physicians that, hey, something's going on.
Right.
But I think that's something that maybe mainstream medicine does not necessarily do. Anyway, I am what you would call like an estrogen overproducer, estrogen dominant. So my body either overproduces or doesn't metabolize estrogen well, which leads to a bunch of different issues. It's similar to things like endometriosis or fibroids. Those can also be side effects of having this kind of estrogen dominance. In my case, it presented as a tumor in my breast. And so when you're diagnosed as well, there's a lot of testing that's done to determine, for example, the stage that you're at.
Right.
I did something called an Oncotype DX score to determine if I should proceed with chemotherapy, if I was a good candidate for that or not, because the research has now shown that not all candidates are, chemotherapy is not useful for all candidates, essentially,
Right.
Especially early stage breast cancer, which I was. So when I was first diagnosed, I was told it was stage 1. After I did a lumpectomy, I was then told it was stage 2 because the tumor was a little bit bigger than they originally had measured it to be. So once you're about 2.5 centimeters. So there's a bunch of different ways that the doctors will determine what stage you are, the size of the tumor, whether it has spread to your lymph nodes, whether it has affected another organ. In my case, I was stage 2 only because of the size. It had not yet spread to the lymph nodes, thankfully. Anyway, so my journey has been one to personally understand, why is my body behaving this way? Why am I an overproducer? How can I balance my hormones? How do I just increase the opportunities for my body to heal itself?
Wow. No, one of the things that, and perhaps maybe the nutritionist and the doctor can maybe agree with me on this, that as you spoke just now, right? You sound like a doctor, and even those words, you're very fluent with them. So it seems as if your diagnosis, it also makes you even more aware of your body and how you relate to this. Am I right?
Absolutely. I mean, when I was diagnosed, I didn't know anything about cancer really, other than, just a few people that have had it, but I didn't do any
Yeah.
in-depth reading. One of the things about myself is like I become really obsessed about information, and I like to, God gave me this body, so I'm the custodian of this body. And so, I go to my physicians, but I must be able to have an intelligent conversation with those physicians.
Right.
I have found that there have been numerous situations where I've had to actually advocate for my own care. And the way that I've had to do that was to, just equip myself with a lot of information. So I've done a lot of reading. I've read medical journals. I read a lot of natural medicine protocols. I watch a lot of videos.
Right.
I read everything that the doctor gives me, plus a lot more.
All right, all right. Definitely, this is a month, folks, that you really have to keep locked into Zoom Hope Live. So, Dr. Frankson, I want to get your take on this discussion point here. In the Bahamas, this is a challenge. I wish I could say I know a handful of persons who have been impacted by breast cancer, but it's more than a handful. There's so much persons that I know who have, one way or the other deal with this. So what could you bring to the table now from this discussion point?
Well, the first thing is to answer her question that she deferred to the doctor. And that is, what is breast cancer? Well, first of all, what is cancer? Cancer is an unnatural growth of the cells in your bodies. Every cell in your body has an opportunity to grow, and it goes through what we call a cell cycle. And that as it goes through those cycles, it has parts in windows in the cycle where it is particularly vulnerable to certain things and depends upon certain genes and so forth. And if you have, in the case of breast cancer, if you have something like a BRCA gene mutation, that can actually interfere with the whole process. And for other cancers, other viruses can cause other mutations in other genes, other things like radiation also can cause them and so forth. If you're out in the sun for long, the skin can get damaged, even if you're a Black person. I remember when I was doing my final examination, the surgery exam, and we had all those days what we call short cases, and they gave you a lot of, you just walked through and looked at people and said what the diagnosis was. And I walked and looked at this lady, and she was a Black lady, a little, as they say in the Bahamas, fluffy, and I didn't see anything wrong with her. And then something said, "Can I see the sole of your foot, ma'am?" And there it was, the cancer was on the sole of her foot, and it was a skin cancer. So don't you believe that because you're a Black person, you can't get skin cancer? I passed the exam, and I never was able to follow up to see what happened to that lady. To this day, I wonder. But, they bring in these patients from far and wide, and so I never got it. But just to go to the point that these cancers, they start to grow, and they forget to stop growing. They stop going through the cycle. And it is as if the cell is actually trying to live forever. Normally, the cells in your body retire after a while, and a process that is called apoptosis. Some people call it apoptosis, but it's really apoptosis. They do that, and other cells make their way. After many of these cells have divided and divided, sometimes, it's time for them to retire, a certain section of them.
Yeah.
And they retire, but not so with cancer. Cancer cells want to stick around forever. And on top of that, they develop some nasty habits. One of them, for example, is like they learn how to produce a hormone that can help them to make their own blood supply. So as that gets bad, you can imagine they get greedy. and then they can even break off into the blood supply and or other tubes in our body, like lymph ducts and so, and they can go and spread to other parts of your body, and do the same thing all over again, and it can suck you dry by the time they've developed all that blood supply to feed themselves, and you die like that. You die drawn down by what the cancer has stolen all of the nourishment from the rest of your body, and you just die. Sometimes it's in your brain, and it doesn't even get to that stage where the brain is a fixed cage. It can't open up except when you're just born or so, and so as it gets bigger, it's going to force parts of the brain down in the back through the hole in the where the spinal cord comes out. It's going to herniate it and cut off your respiration. The center that controls your respiration and your heartbeats, and it's going to kill you that way by herniating your brain. And then others might just erode into a blood vessel or something and just burst and bleed and so forth. But the typical way is that it draws you down. It's a process that, the big word we use is, it leaves you catatonic, leaves you starved. And it's not a pretty thing to see. So I got very interested in prevention. And I will say that because it is so much easier to prevent this. Your body is always trying to prevent cancer. Your body is always using the immune system to catch unruly cells and to try to bring them back in order, or to remove them, attack them and remove them if you are if they are unruly and going to be a threat. And most times the body succeeds. But for a small percent of us, take for example breast cancer, about 1 in 8 women will at some time in their life have to deal with this diagnosis at some time in their life, usually very late in their lives, because that's when your immune system is weakest and it is not whipping those cells out of the way, and so on. But you have a few women who will develop breast cancer when they're young, and that's usually a more stubborn cancer, and you have to move on it very quickly, and so on. The problem is that, especially if your breast is of a certain big size and it's dense, it's full, and it's not as easy to feel all the areas of it. Sometimes even after a breast examination, you could miss it, and then the next time you come, it has spread elsewhere. So we have things now that we ask women to do, like their own self-examination. Nobody knows your own body except like you, and you have two breasts to compare, and you say that both of them should be feeling the same way. And if one starts to feel a little different, you know that the game has changed. Something is there suspicious. Usually it is not a cancer. That's the other good news. Usually it's just from the cycles of your body, your women's cycles and so hormones. Sometimes you get some of the tissue get lumpy. So, but don't sit down on that. Whatever it is, you go and see the doctor and say, "Doctor, I have noticed something unusual. Please, could you explore this for me?" And it might even lead to a biopsy where we can actually see these unruly cells. And we can actually just, if we catch it early enough, that thing that we do to remove the cells, to do the biopsy of it, we call it, send it to the lab and look, just that alone might take out the whole thing. Unfortunately, that is not the case for a lot of women. A lot of women, it is more invasive. It is beyond the little ducts, the milk ducts in the breast. And by the way, I need to squeeze this in quickly. Men too can get it, but far more common in women.
Actually, we're going to talk about that as well as prostate further down in the month. And producer was if and but if we should bring you in now or then. But definitely we are going to delve into that, and I'm happy that you say that now as well. So Shandira, what's your perspective or knowledge as it relates to breast cancer that you could feed our audience with, and even myself, please?
Okay, so from a nutritional standpoint, of course, what we take into our bodies, what we put on our bodies, have an effect on our overall health. And so I'm going to start with what we put on our bodies. So the deodorants that we use, the hair products, the lotions, even down to sanitary pads, all of those can have an impact on what goes into the body. And a lot
Right.
of that, those things are loaded with a lot of chemicals that can also get into our system and cause our hormones, especially estrogen, to sort of act up a bit and cause abnormal growths and stuff in different parts of the body. Okay, and in terms of the food now, of course, when we don't have a healthy or balanced diet, when we eat a lot of junk foods, the greasy foods, refined foods, fast foods,
Right.
even dairy foods, they sort of fuel, and even sugars, refined oils, they tend to feed those cells, those cancer cells, and they end up growing and, well, you develop cancer. And so we want to really make sure that we would follow a healthy diet as much as possible, eat more real foods,
Right.
foods are not loaded with a lot of additives and preservatives and that are refined or processed a whole lot. Now we can't get away from some processed foods, but we want to do our best as possible to eat more real food as nature has provided them. And then, of course, there's the point of water drinking as well. So when we don't drink sufficient water, that can also lead to a lot of issues in our system. Because water helps to cleanse the system, and if you have a lot of toxins in your system, they could build
Right.
up and cause all kind of different health conditions in your body. And there's exercise as well. There is the weight that we're at, and of course, most of our population is overweight or obese, and so that alone spells increased risk for many of us. And so we want to make sure that we do the things that we know to decrease our risk. As Dr. Frankson mentioned, prevention is really important. We don't want to wait until we get sick to try to start doing the things. And so we want to become knowledgeable about our bodies as much as possible. And Andrina mentioned about when she got cancer, she learned as much as she can about it. And that's something that I always encourage my patients to do. So whether you have diabetes, high blood pressure, whatever it is, you want to become as knowledgeable about your condition as you can, so that you know about it and you know how to actually treat your body or how to care for your body. And don't
Right.
just sit there. You want to reach out to different health professionals to get help. Don't suffer in silence. Okay, cancer does not have to be a death sentence. So we want to do our best to empower ourselves, empower our family members to try to prevent cancer as much as possible.
Right. Right. So yeah, we're definitely going to come back some more as it relates to nutrition in terms of recovery and treatment. But one of the thing when I reflect as it relates to breast cancer, I know less survivor. You're one of those, Andrina. So tell us about that. Tell us about your experience as a breast cancer survivor. Yeah, you're muted. If you could just unmute yourself. All right, there you go. All right. Mhm.
Yeah. So when I was diagnosed with the breast cancer on November 21st, I found out the tumor myself from. I'll just share this quickly because of the audience here, but I that day I had two baths, and for some reason, like I was like, why do I want to take another bath? And I went into the shower, and I tell people that God whispered in my ear, and I found this tumor in my breast. It's very fuzzy. I don't remember how I found it, but I found this tumor in my breast. So that was November 2nd, and November 21st, I was diagnosed after a long stretch of ultrasounds. Then when the ultrasound wasn't conclusive, mammogram, and then when the mammogram wasn't conclusive, a biopsy. And then the results of the biopsy on November 21st, I was diagnosed, and November 29th, I actually had a lumpectomy. So I chose to remove the lump from my breast instead of removing my breast. On the advice of the doctors, I was, and because of the time of the year, it would have been hard to do a mastectomy. Because for a mastectomy, you need like a plastic surgeon and stuff like that. So anyway,
Right.
so I did a lumpectomy, and when you do a lumpectomy with breast cancer, normally you do radiation. So they radiate essentially the chest wall, the breast tissue, and all around like the quadrant of the breast.
Hold on. Sorry, I don't want to stop you, but because I want you to continue on that line, right? But as you start, you said you went to take 2 showers, right? And you found it. Was it by accident, or is it something that you do in checking yourself?
I mean, I checked my breasts, but I wouldn't say I had a cadence. So I checked my breast, when the Holy Spirit told me to check my breast.
Right.
It wasn't like I check it every month, which is something that I encourage my friends to do. I write them, I put it on my WhatsApp profile, I put it on my Facebook profile. When was the last time you checked your breast? So that's something that I'm very passionate about, and I try to educate people around me. So I that night, like I said, it was my third. I went into the shower for the third time, and I'm in Canada, right? It's really cold. People hardly even bathe here, but like that's just a separate joke.
Right,
Don't tell me I said that. But so I had like this third shower. Just I don't know. As I said, it felt like the Holy Spirit was leading me. At the time, I didn't know that. So totally by accident, I was not intending at this late hour of the night when I chose to have like this third shower to be checking my breast. So I feel like God led me down that path, which I don't even, it's so fuzzy to me, like how my memory of why I checked my breast and how I found it. But I remember calling my husband and said, hey, come and check this for me. And then he, just to kind of have someone else say, to say, am I going crazy? And to Dr. Franson's earlier point, like we have 2 breasts. So it was always like, let me see how this one feels. Like, no, this one definitely feels a little bit weird. And even after like going to the doctor, I'll tell you that they weren't able to find the tumor. Like I had to show them. And the funny thing is sometimes they tell you that you should check your breast when you're laying down. I was standing up, and that's the only position that I could find a tumor. When I lay down, I could not find a tumor. It was like, they would say it's at 12 o'clock, so it was right at the top. And so only when I stood up, I could feel the lump in my breast. So I always had to show like my family doctor when I went to see her, I showed her where it was, and not the usual position because they usually lay you down to check your breast, and that didn't work for me. So that's really how, I found this tumor and was diagnosed. As I said, I believe that the Holy Spirit just led me to that. I'd gotten baptized like maybe the September before my diagnosis. And so, I like to say that the gift of the Holy Spirit that I received when I was baptized was what essentially led me to finding that tumor. But you asked, the question was, how is it as a survivor? So
yes.
That was November 29th that I did the surgery, and I started chemotherapy. I started doing a lot of research. Just, I at first wanted to just pursue a full natural therapy. And then I thought, as I prayed about it, I decided to do both mainstream medicine and natural medicine. I did chemotherapy, maybe the January to the March. I had 4 rounds of chemotherapy. Because I'm early stages, like I didn't require, lost my hair and all that fun stuff. And then I did radiation. So I remember when I finished radiation, it was probably like May 28th, just a couple of days before my birthday, which is June 1st. And so I remember it well. I thought that when I rang that bell, this is where I felt like, okay, I'm in this valley, and after this is going to be like an upward trajectory. Mentally, I was doing very well. I think I've really been blessed in that way. Like I have not really suffered a lot of the psychological trauma that some people do. Just released fear to God. So that's not something that burdened me sufficiently to, cause any issues. But my body did go through a lot. I would say that the radiation, especially, well, I can't say for sure which it is, but I had a lot of inflammation, a lot of pain. I would just walk around the block and it felt like needles in my bones.
Wow.
That's not something that I knew would happen. Like I wasn't prepared for that. Mentally, I was prepared for, I'm going to do the chemotherapy, I'm going to do the radiation, but I wasn't prepared for that stuff. I would cry many, many days, and my doctor would literally tell me, just take Advil. That's what my oncologist told me, just take Advil. And I would say, but I can't live on Advil. Like, what do I do? And I really didn't get the answers there. So I did a lot of research on my own, and I decided that the way that I was going to heal my body was going to be with nutrition, especially. The other thing so during my chemotherapy, I had really severe allergic reactions. So what they did was they pumped me with even more steroids to prevent the allergic reaction, which caused me to gain a lot of weight.
Right.
Because my cancer is estrogen positive, there is something that they give us, which is an estrogen blocker. So that's a drug that you take for 5 years. Some people take it for 10 years. Based on my age, quite likely they're going to recommend that I take it for like an additional 3 or 4 or 5 years until I get to menopause. So I'm 43, and I was diagnosed when I was 41. So I started taking this drug called tamoxifen, which so for me, tamoxifen has been, I don't know, brutal. My body was already inflamed, and tamoxifen did not help. I started to grow polyps on my uterus, was diagnosed with, I think, uterine hyperplasia. So in December last year, I did a polypectomy to remove the polyps off my uterus. It caused significant bleeding. So my cycle was like I completely disrupted. So I essentially on my, I think during chemotherapy, I'd lost my period, which sometimes it does that. It causes you to go into like a fake menopause. And when my cycle returned, it basically just continued. Like I just bled continuously and never stopped. At that point, they stopped the tamoxifen. I had so that was September, and then I had a polypectomy in December. By the time we figured out what was going on, it was in the middle of the lockdown. It was hard to get access to the hospitals. I was at the time I declined doing a hysterectomy because I wanted to take it, I would say, incremental. I wanted to be a little bit more incremental in my approach. So I felt battered as well. I had a lot of pain, like I was saying, and so I didn't want to add another major surgery to the mix. So I did a polypectomy. My oncologist, I was off tamoxifen. I was very healthy. I mean, living a very rigid, I would say, strict vegan diet, whole food, plant-based. I essentially ate from 4 categories of food, which is whole foods, legumes, plants, and vegetables and fruits. Very low fat. So I felt good, but my oncologist drove a lot of fear in me. I would say not his fault. That's what they're trained to do. He wanted me to go back on tamoxifen. I did go back on tamoxifen. Again, it caused a lot of issues with my just periods. And so I decided to do a hysterectomy. He felt that I should get support for like hormonal testing to make sure that my body is not overproducing anymore. So this is something that I've been researching now. A lot of my research is, again, how to balance my hormones, how to metabolize estrogen. And so it's weird. Physically, I had a really hard go of it. My last surgery was August 13th. That's when I had a hysterectomy. I was just too ill and I have to work. I was tired all the time, like so tired because my iron was so low. And so, I had a hysterectomy and I feel really good. It was hard for me, not because I wanted to have more children, because I think people don't understand.
As a woman.
I mean, that too, but I think that, I think God in his wisdom gave us all the organs that we need. So I don't take those decisions lightly. And some of the things that people would say, well, is thank God you have your children. And so you don't need those organs anyway. I don't share that view.
Right.
I think, we have the organs that we need. And there are other complications that come from having a hysterectomy sometimes, especially for me. I had the surgery and I feel good. My iron count has gone up. All of my blood markers are doing well. I'm starting to lose weight again because I'm able to exercise again. I was exercising before, but I was so tired and weak and just not feeling well. But mentally, I felt really well. I had a really good community. My family has been amazing. My village has just been really, really amazing. So mentally, I was doing well, but physically, I took a toll. Now, where I am today, I would say I feel good. Like I physically, I'm feeling really strong. Exercising a lot. I'm eating well. I am very involved in my community of cancer survivors. That's how I pay it forward.
No, I've been really just into what you're saying and just into you. So recovery is not perhaps what I thought it was, or maybe other persons might thought it was. It's a grueling process based upon what you're sharing in terms of complications, in terms of medications. So it's not like your hand was broken and it's fixed and you just continue, you're swinging on the bars again.
Exactly. And I think that was the point that I forgot. That was the point I was trying to make. So when I did the radiation, I rang the bell. I thought, hey, this is done now and everything is up for me. And, that was not my journey. It's fine. I'm not complaining. It's just the walk that I have to take. But it's not easy. And you find too that all the women in my circle who have breast cancer, and there are quite a few, at least 5 or 6 of them, a few have passed. The ones that are in my circle, I would say they all suffer. What we've learned to do is to suffer silently. We learn not to complain, so you probably don't even tell your spouse, because after a while you figure this is too much, like you're just complaining a lot. So, sometimes you might talk about the things that are really, really bad, but there are like 5 other things going on. And so I think, I always have a lot of compassion for women who have walked this walk, because I know it's a lot of suffering. I believe that we can be released from that suffering through different things, but it's not as easy, and it doesn't end when the treatment.
And I think I got that. And I am happy that you actually bring that out there. That it's not, you know, well, I've done one thing or the other, and now I am just running along. So I'm happy for that, and definitely will continue to hear your experience as you share. Um, so I want both of you as well, Chandira and Dr. Frankson, to just kind of know, um, as it relates to your aspect of it. Um, you have been on the end of maybe knowing a family member, knowing a patient who have gone through it. What has been your experience where that is concerned? Um, either of you could chime in now, Dr. Frankson or um, Shandira. Go ahead.
I think she's muted. Shandira.
Go ahead, Dr. Frankson.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the first actual person I ever met with breast cancer was when my grandmother used to go around helping people in the community. And I was about maybe 7, 8 years old. I used to follow her. Those days they used to call the position that she holds in church, they used to call it the Dorcas position. She was a leader. We call it other nice names now, like community services leader and so. But I used to follow her, and I used to love it actually, and I loved her too. Well, Sister Boyd, and she would go. I remember it was down in Kingston, in a poor area, and she would go. She went there to deliver some things and so on. And the lady was fat, and she was sitting up, and her top was off, but she had covered herself with a towel. And then she removed the towel a bit to show what she was suffering with. And there it is. I thought it was like her skin looked like orange peel, looked like an orange skin. And then when I went to medical school, I learned that the name of it is peau d'orange, the skin of an orange. And so, that was the first time I ever saw it. And I asked of course, they didn't allow me to see much, but I asked my grandmother, and she explained to me that this lady is suffering badly. She has a cancer in her breast, and that it has reached a bad stage and she might soon die. So I thought this was the worst disease in the world after that. And, when I went to medical school, I studied it really well because I came to school to learn about the worst diseases in the world. And then to my relief, it actually can be picked up early, and it can become not the worst disease in the world. But if it is left and you play with it and you try all kinds of things that don't work, it will continue growing. And that's one of the hardest lessons, I think, for people to realize is that taking extra vitamins and all that. Well, the breast cancer is saying, thank you for the vitamins. I'm going to use it too. So we have to be very balanced with these things. And while we're balancing nutrition, we have to balance also getting proper medical care early. And I found out that if you really catch this thing very early, you actually nip it out. And even if you're at a stage where you catch it a little bit late, but there can be certain kinds of surgeries done or radiation and so forth, as was mentioned, chemotherapy, you match yourself to see if you qualify for that. The whole thing about breast cancer now is a whole different disease than it used to be when I was a boy. And my first male breast cancer case I actually saw while I was in medical school. And I just saw this man take off his shirt, and around his nipple area looked all wrinkled up and like a dimple in there. And that didn't look normal compared to our breast. And I knew something was wrong. And as we worked him up, we found that it was that. The old-time treatments for breast cancer was, in the old days, was to just give up and say God's will be done. And then afterwards, a gentleman who actually got into medical school because he was privileged. He went to Yale University, This was long before I was born. And he was a kind of a playboy, flamboyant fellow. And he got into cocaine habits. And the cocaine mashed up his medical career. But one of his teachers really liked him and his family and took him back and rehabilitated him. And he changed into this surgeon who was extra slow and extra careful and would remove everything in sight. And that was at Johns Hopkins University. And that was the first time we talked about a thing called a radical breast or mastectomy. And we found out that not that many compared to today, but several of the patients actually did better. Many of them died, but they died not from the thing that lady had that I saw when I was a child, where it now, even the skin breaks down now and it becomes an ugly ulcer and it's bad to smell in the house and it's an embarrassment and they put you in the back room and all of that. Now you can have breast cancer and nobody knows because you had the surgery, removed all the parts that were going to tear down the skin, and you can have, you're more presentable. Even if you die with more dignity. But more importantly, as we did more research, we found out that you could do less and less invasive work and try to catch it earlier, and also add radiation treatment or chemotherapy and good nutritional therapy as well. That really helps with the whole, it's a combination. No one thing by itself helps in this thing. And together, nowadays, we even looking at immune therapy, looking at some of the same strategies we have in here now, how to give this new kind of COVID vaccine. That same strategy, some of those strategies, how to use them to deliver certain drugs to the issue in ways that we couldn't do otherwise. We're finding some fantastic results, you know. So that has been my experience, has been an experience where it was a nightmare as I saw it first as a child, right through to now. We're looking at something now where it is actually something now where we're mapping your genes. And the genes doesn't explain. I remember I talked about BRCA1 and BRCA2. Well, BRCA just means breast cancer gene. That's all it means. And actually, BRCA is not a bad gene. It's a gene that actually helps the tissues of your breasts and ovaries and so forth, other tissues too, whenever there's damage to them, to repair them.
Right.
But it's when you get a damage to that gene, a BRCA1 mutation, we call it, and it can't do the repair properly. That's when the breast tissue that should be repaired slips out of hand, and then you get it. So now we are understanding that better. And BRCA2, BRCA1, as she mentioned earlier, with doing your receptors, estrogen and so forth, that she mentioned, the 3 types of receptors. And if you are positive, we have drugs like she mentioned, tamoxifen, that she had a rough experience with. But a lot of women are finding that tamoxifen is a great maintenance therapy, and we keep them on it for years. And it has some side effects too, like it sends you into early menopause if you're a young person. But you're able to live long enough and look about your affairs, enjoy your grandchildren and all of that. So a lot of women are having good reports now and are able to tell you that they are seeing breast cancer now in a different light.
Right.
You have to say this quickly. When a man gets a breast cancer, he has so little breast tissue that for him, you better move like lightning, because his cancer will spread straight to muscle, straight into the lymphatic, straight into bloodstream, and spread faster. So men, the results are usually a little bit. But even with men, we are now finding that with education and with so on and so forth, we salvage a lot of the men.
Right. All right. So thank you. Let's hear from you, Shandira, and then we're gonna go to some viewers' questions and comments. So please share those. We're looking for them, and we will come to them shortly. So we're looking for your comments. We're looking for your questions. We'll touch those as we will continue our dialogue. Go ahead, Shandira.
Okay, so for me, because I work in a public health setting, I don't get to see patients in a private, well, in the hospital setting where they're
Right.
actually going through the treatments and recovery. We actually have dietitians in the hospital that deal more with that. But when they come to me in the public health setting for like follow-up education or whatever it may be, I try to encourage them, advise them, or counsel them on how to actually improve their nutrition. Of course, I'll do an assessment first to see where they're at and see where they need to improve in terms of helping to optimize their diets in order to keep their chances for developing a cancer again or coming out of remission. And also, when they come to me, sometimes too, they also have other health conditions, like they may have diabetes or high blood pressure, they may be overweight or obese. So I love to do like I'm gonna take a holistic approach to helping them to be able to get healthier. So it's not just with the cancer itself, but having overall health.
All right. Have you ever had a friend or family or anything like that with cancer?
Yes, I've had family, friends, co-workers. Yes, so I've had a number of persons who had breast cancer. Some of them had died.
Right.
Some of them died already. Some are living pretty much healthy lives. As Andrina is, they are following those healthy lifestyle principles and really having a good quality of life.
Right. And that's why a month like this is very important. Let's go into the viewers' comments. I see a lot of people listening today, and I think it's a really moving program. Even as we're listening to your story, Andrina, I think it's a powerful story.
Now, can I just say something quickly, sir?
Sure.
It's only 15% of breast cancer patients that we can link to the BRCA gene damage, Only 15%. So don't think that this BRCA gene thing is the whole answer to the whole thing.
Right.
Most of the women, that's what is left? 85%? 85% of the causes, we're not so sure where you got it because there was no history in the family, etc. And but and of course there is more research. That's one of the reasons why we're not so sure is that most of the research has been focused on the BRCA gene issue and not enough on these other ways, that other genes, for example. But those other genes are usually rarer than even the BRCA gene. But what else is going on? We're not even too sure. So don't put all your hopes on, my family doesn't have that gene problem, so I am safe.
Right.
Be vigilant, because if you catch it early, and that includes, the mammograms, and also these days we have the computerized mammograms. That's how my family member found out. They did the mammogram and missed it, and then go back for the computerized mammogram, and there it was. And it was there nicely in the duct. It hadn't spread yet. And that was a good news story.
I think you have just answered your question, and that's exactly what we were about to tune up. Because Paula Russell asked, I know some persons have the assumption that breast cancer is genetic. True or false? And I believe you have answered that. It can be true, but you're saying that 85% of those who got it, really, they have no let me let you speak. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, no, I'm saying I'm one of those people. So in Canada they do detailed genetic testing as much as the technology allows. And I was negative for the BRCA gene and for other genes that they tested. Also, I'm the only known cancer case in my family. So I didn't have a history of breast or any other form of cancer that I am aware of. Like, I don't know any family members that have cancer. But one thing I would say is, I don't want to say I disagree with Dr. Frankson, but I think for me, we don't know what cause necessarily, but I think that there are things that cause it.
Absolutely.
So, whereas I've never done a regression to say, okay, this is specifically what caused it for me. I know I had a lot of stress, and I had other symptoms that told me that there were things that were going on. At the time, I didn't know that it was like estrogen overproduction. So estrogen is a huge thing for breast cancer. Let me just say this again. Estrogen is a huge thing for breast cancer. So if you have things like fibroids, endometriosis, PCOS, fibrocystic breast, all of those things, chances are you're an estrogen dominant. And there are things that causes estrogen overproduction. And there are things like Shandira mentioned, the things that you put on your body, the chemicals in your ear, the things that you use to clean your floors, xenoestrogens that come from things like plastics. So there are a lot of things that contribute to it. In my case, like for me, like no one has told me this, but I know myself, I know my life. I took on a lot of stress and I did a lot of things and I didn't know how to say no, and I just was going, and I moved to a new country and I was going again. And, I remember once I had vertigo, like really bad vertigo. This was in Jamaica. And I had gone to see this ENT, and he's a really old guy. And he said to me, believe it or not, cortisol will, which is like the stress hormone, will somehow cause you to have vertigo. So he said, I don't know what's going on with you, but you need to reduce your stress. So for me, like I struggle with coffee, like I love coffee. And so, my naturopath says that for like estrogen dominant people like myself, coffee sometimes causes a spike in cortisol. So, just little things like that I need to know about me, what is my story, what is my journey. One of the things that, like I spoke about, my life before cancer was a lot more stressful. My life after cancer has been a lot more stress-free. I remember when I was diagnosed that, my husband had to go and pick up my son from school, and I told him it's okay, I'll walk. And there's a little bookstore that I like to go to. And I remember sitting in the bookstore and I had like an epiphany. And it was that I couldn't carry cancer and all the other things that were stressing me out anymore. I wasn't going to be able to manage both of those things. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, I felt like a burden just was lifted off of my shoulders. All the things that I don't even know why those things mattered to me or why they stressed me out so much. But I just released those things. And so mentally and psychologically, I've been doing very, very well. I don't take on stress in the way that I used to anymore. Anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, and the reason for that, what you said is like a textbook of knowledge, because one of the reasons for that is these two things we're sure of that are risk factors for breast cancer. One of them is the BRCA gene, but that only accounts for 15%, as I said. And if you have a family history on top of that, your percent can go right up, your risk can go even more, especially for BRCA1 and a little bit less for BRCA2 damaged genes. But one of the things we are sure of is age. Age, and the reason why age is a risk factor is age allows you, if you have bad habits, to have many years of those bad habits. And they just fill up your truckload, your truck back, your Ford F-150 truck back of life. It fills it up with dirt. And now you have to fill that. But not age by itself. It's age with you practicing stress, for example, or eating foods that are not as organic and, and have all these xenoestrogens, as you mentioned, and pesticides and so forth and so on. So age itself is a good thing, a good thing to get old, okay? But if you're getting old and bagging up yourself with all kinds of things that increase your stress loads and your exposure to things that will get the cancer, that's how age becomes the carriage that can help us. And you, let me tell you why. Another reason, a funny reason why too, in this pandemic, now that we have vaccines that can let you not die from smallpox and whooping cough and all of that, diphtheria and all of that, more people now can live long to fill up your pickup back with foolishness. So the vaccines are good in that they keep you longer. But really, they're really good only when you manage a healthy lifestyle, a positive lifestyle. There is such a thing known as a cancer-prone personality. The person who worry about everything, easy to quarrel, miserable, always have something negative to say about you. If you are one of those people, check yourself at the age gate, please, because you need to let off of your truck, so that you can go through life instead with the epiphany that she talks about, where you're transformed into a happier, cancer-resilient, cancer-resistant kind of person.
Right. When I was in school as a colporteur, I used to sell this book by the name of Less Stress, rather.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it speaks of the different kinds of stress, eustress and distress.
Right.
Eustress is positive stress, and when it gets too much, it becomes distress, and those kind of thing. And it's a good book. I have it somewhere. Maybe it's in the other room somewhere in the library. But it tells us that we need to really don't carry stress with us, because it has a way of tearing down our body one way or the other. Now, I want us to go into the next discussion point, and I want you to share. Everyone, just feel free to just cross discuss. Share your experience some more with treatment as a patient, and as a doctor and a nutritionist. I want you to cross share your experience and talk with each other about this issue of breast cancer. Andrina, perhaps maybe you could begin it.
Yeah, so I think I kind of preempted your discussion.
No, that's all right.
I spoke about my treatment earlier. So the first person you meet in your breast cancer journey will likely be, well, you go to your physician, your normal physician. And then they send you to a breast surgeon. So the breast surgeon is a person who does like the biopsy. And if the biopsy is positive, then the breast surgeon will likely also do either a lumpectomy or a mastectomy. So a couple things, like I panicked. I remember when I went on November 21st to see the breast surgeon. I remember he presented these options to me, and I didn't hear anything after he said it was cancer, wow. And here he is asking me to make a decision on treatment, and I'm not even hearing anything he's saying.
So you're like just gone in space.
Yeah, just I don't know. I was blank. Like I didn't feel worried, or I wasn't crying. I wasn't panicking, but I wasn't very present. In fact, I called him the very next day, and I started saying to him, well, you didn't tell me what stage of cancer I have. You didn't tell me the size of the cancer. And he's like, well, that's something that routinely I have to do. So I know I told you this. So he recommended a lumpectomy because it could be done a lot faster, because I was early stage. And and so anyway, the day I went, the day after, I remember calling him and I said, no, I changed my mind. I want to do a mastectomy. I just want to get rid of everything, and I want to do a double. I'm like, I want you to just take both of my breasts and as much of my chest tissue and all kinds of things. I was telling him, because no, I stayed up the entire night and I read all kinds of things. And so anyway, he kind of taught me off the ledge, and he said, well, here's the thing. There was a time when the only treatment that we had for breast cancer was mastectomy, but the cancer would return. And so after many years of research and being able to, like Dr. Frankenstein mentioned, that they developed other techniques that are less invasive, which have the same or similar outcomes in terms of success rates. So he convinced me to do the lumpectomy. So the other thing is, so you'll find out as well that I don't know if it's done in Jamaica, but or Bahamas, probably in the Bahamas, and I'm sure it's probably dependent on how much care you can afford. But there's a stage of cancer, but a lot of times the oncologists are concerned more about the grade of the cancer. So you'll be graded from 1 to 3. Grade 1 is like the cancer is not very aggressive. So certain things, grade 3 is the maximum, and my cancer was grade 3. So my breast surgeon said it was, in his opinion, he did not want me to wait. And for the mastectomy, I would have had to wait longer. For the lumpectomy, he could have done it. So I chose the lumpectomy, and I did that. And I'm comfortable with that decision now. But just to explain some of the decisioning that goes into, do you remove the lump or do you remove the breast, for example? At that stage, also, they remove lymph nodes when they're removing the tumor. They check the lymph nodes to see if the cancer has spread, if there's any traces of cancer. Thankfully for me, the cancer had not been detected in my lymph nodes, which is really good news. The oncologist and the breast surgeon and the radiation oncologist, which I didn't know that they were two different things. So there's an oncologist, and then there's a radiation oncologist. He's different.
Right.
So he essentially explained how important or how beneficial it was if the cancer had not started moving as yet. So I was early stages, and my oncologist encouraged me to pursue the most aggressive treatment, because I see one of the questions that's asked that, when young people get cancer, they tend, they're seeing that most people, that it's worse for the young people, that the older people are living with it. I don't know the extent of the statistics, but I will say this, that my oncologist, his thing was so I came up with an Oncotype DX score of 22, and you can Google what that is. It's not high, but from my age, they recommend chemotherapy. Well, it's a decision that you make with your oncologist.
Right.
And so I made a decision. I trusted him, and did the chemotherapy. Did a very aggressive form of chemotherapy as well, which, like I said, I had a hard go of it because, right. So I had like severe allergic reactions. So each time I'd go for chemotherapy, the first thing that they had to do was literally I'd be given like IV Benadryl, and then a lot of steroids that had to be taken leading up to the actual chemo treatment, just to allow my body to not respond, like get anaphylactic, like an anaphylactic response to the chemotherapy. Ended up in the emergency room almost every single time after chemo. I would get really high fevers. So my goal of, I would say, is, it was hard. I won't say it wasn't hard, but mentally I was very strong. Spiritually, I was very strong as well. God just, in that moment, like I said, in the bookstore, essentially, he released me from the stress and the fear. A scripture that carried me, I'm trying to remember what passage it is. I think it's 1 John 4:18 that says there's no fear in love. And essentially, I found that it carried me throughout my treatment. It carried me to this day, because I didn't have that perspective. But the perspective is that there is no fear in love. Perfect love drives out fear. And I felt like I could love cancer away. If I surrounded myself with love, if I allowed myself to receive enough love, that I could literally love cancer away. And so I have a little group on Facebook called Send Cancer My Love, a little YouTube channel, and it's kind of weird, but I tell people, hey, my quality of life post-cancer mentally is so much better because I don't have so much stress.
No, we'd like to get that. So if you could send us those privately so that we can share it.
Sure.
Because there's a lot of people out there that really need this. So, but I want to hear, I don't, from the others. So you could chime in and share your experience with treatment as a patient, doctor, nutritionist.
All right, let me. Chandira always wants me to go first, so I'll go first. These days we treat cancer with love. Here, if you go to a good cancer center, not only the doctor sees you, but a nurse coordinates your care. And that nurse's job, that particular nurse, there are other nurses too, who do other things, but that nurse is like your case manager. She's going to link you with a pastor. She's going to link you with your radiation oncologist for if and when you need that, to your chemotherapist if and when you need that, to your nutritionist, to your physical exercise coach, to anything you need for us, counselor, anything you need. And if you get surgery, even to your physical therapist and occupational therapist, because you're going to need to know how to use that arm again and all of that sort of thing, and make the best of what muscles are left if they happen to take some of the muscles away from your chest muscles and so on. And it's a total package that cares for you. Don't get scared now. All of these people don't descend down on you. That nurse and that doctor, in fact, more so the nurse and the doctor, because she also controls when the doctor comes into your life or not, especially that doctor that has a knife, to cut. She lines up when that doctor is to be with you and when that doctor is through with you. And, sometimes she does 2 at a time. For example, that doctor might believe that as you open the wound and take out the lump, you actually should beam some radiation in there. That's one approach. Some doctors believe, no, let it stitch up first, heal up, then you do the radiation. So different, and it's all up in research now. All of these things. The research on cancer now is like on steroids itself. It's a lot of research that's being done. Journals now just on breast cancer. The amount of research that is going on, and they're constantly learning what to do. This doctor, one of the doctors that I was experienced with in California where I did my public health training and so forth, that doctor, all she did was remove lumps from the breast every day of her life. So, she was good. And if the lump happened to be just a little bit under the skin, she was so skillful she could probably get it so that she got clear margins without having to tear your skin. And the breast is also an area of identity and pride for women, especially. And she could do some plastic surgery too, if necessary. Or she could bring in a plastic surgeon if it was a bigger job, to do a bigger job on it. And then that person and the other members of the team, or the oncologist comes in now. And the oncologist now, their job is to track you. And if, for example, after you have had the plastic surgery and you found your chest too flat, and then you decide to have an implant, most people who get an implant, the breast comes back looking like the normal chest of a woman. And it makes a world of a difference in your psyche. But we have to track, because few of those women with the implants can actually get a reaction around the implant that can produce another kind of cancer, rarely. Right? So we have to track all of that. And it's worth it to still give implants, because most women will never get that. It's rare. 1 or 2 in your lifetime you might see as a doctor of that. But all kinds of things, my brother Green, has to come into individualizing the care for you so that we match what is going on in your situation. Track your family history. We track the genetic part of it, as she said earlier on, and all of that. And we constantly calculating risk. Most of those parts now are the oncologists doing that part and seeing what medications will work for you and all of that. And sometimes those oncologists will do things that seem to you don't make sense. But actually, they have another reason for doing it. For example, it might be like she was positive with all those receptor sites. Those are the kind of things that make us say, okay, put that person on tamoxifen. But suppose she can't handle tamoxifen, and they have what else to put her on? What is another thing of the latest kind? And then there are those who all those receptor sites are negative, and they will still decide to put them on. Most times they don't, but so they might still decide to put them on it because of other things that they're concerned of on the tamoxifen. And when they put you on that stuff, keeping you on for 6, 7, 8 years, to finally graduate you one day from it. And it's a long experience on it. And one of the reasons why they might keep you on is that they're looking at the cancer not as a lump, but they're looking at the cancer like how you look at a rust on your car. You ever see, Larry, when you see one by where the mirror, the side mirror is attached to the car? You go one day and you look and you see a little blister. You say, oops, it's getting rusty. So you go quickly and you fix it. And then 6 months later, on the other side of the car, you see a rust over there. So they're watching all of that too to see if on the other breast, something is going to develop. Because if you have, especially the BRCA gene and all that, it's going to increase your chance that sometime later you might have something on the other breast as well. So sometimes as they put you on the tamoxifen, it might quieten down that and let that chance reduce to almost zero. So you don't get it. You see? Right. And then now, person who believes in natural therapy, etc., might get vexed with that doctor and say, why is this doctor putting me on these things? But the doctor is actually trying to quieten down another cancer popping up on the other breast, or elsewhere in the same breast. And so we have to balance all of those things. And by the way, since I mentioned natural therapy, the nurse, the coordinating nurse, also has a natural therapist who has dedicated their practice to breast cancer, those in the best centers, who knows how to work with the team and when to bring in certain things that seem to work in natural therapy as well. So it is, Larry, it's a total package now.
I got it.
Total package. Even family counseling, because there are some men who actually divorce their wives because they find out that they have breast cancer.
Yes.
Or drop the girl and all of that, which is horrible, because that's when you need your spouse the most.
Right.
You with me? So I'm telling you, it's
a whole package.
Well, it's if you go to a doctor now and they're not giving you a full package, or at least have it there waiting in the back room just to open up to you, change doctors. Go to another team that really gives you a full care, because you as she says, you're God, made by God. This body is a temple, and the temple deserves proper ministry. Right. Proper ministry to that body of yours in the name of the Lord.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let me hear from you, Shandira. We're virtually out of time. I want to hear from you before we go to our final remarks.
So I totally agree with the other panelists. It's a really holistic treatment or therapy that you need to go through in order to really be healthy and thrive. And so when a cancer patient comes to me, or let's say a person who's recovered or recovering from cancer, I will do a quick assessment of their diet as well as their overall lifestyle practices to see what's going on and where they would need help. Then I will come up with a plan. And for the most part, what I'm seeing is the diet is really, really not as it should be. So especially when it comes to eating vegetables, that's one food group that we in the Bahama Center shun a whole lot. But that's the group that is actually going to give you those antioxidants, the phytochemicals, those enzymes that really help to get you healthier. Okay, and so especially when it comes to the green, the orange, and the white produce, the fruits and vegetables, you want to make sure get a bit of those every day, the right amounts. And of course, the treatment will be individualized for each patient based on their needs. Another thing is that we like to drink a lot of sugar-sweetened beverages. We don't like water. We don't drink as much water as we need to drink. Okay, so I encourage them to drink at least 10 8 ounce cups of water, 8 ounce cups of water every day. And if they're not really, some of them not used to drinking water like that, I tell them to do probably like a fruit or vegetable infusion, like add in some lemon slices, cucumber slices, mint leaves, stuff like that to the water to get them into the habit of drinking sugar-free beverages. Okay, and with exercise, that's another thing that we don't do sufficiently. So I try to encourage them to, once they're feeling up to it and well enough, but once they don't have any restrictions for exercise, I'll encourage them to start doing some simple exercise, walking, just go on the beach, go in the water, do something. Because exercise itself is a medicine. And also, I want to switch back to the produce. A lot of our produce are sprayed, and someone mentioned it earlier with the pesticides and different residues on our produce. But to make sure wash them really well. And a really good solution is to use baking soda and water. It helps to remove a whole lot of pesticides from the fruits and vegetables. And of course, those pesticides have health implications, so you want to make sure stay away from them. Stay away from the processed meats and try to follow more of a plant-based diet. That's going to give you a lot of nourishment. It's going to heal you and help you to feel well and stay well. Dairy foods, is cancer and dairy are not friends, so don't do the dairy foods. You also want to not drink alcohol. Okay, no smoking. Stay away from those substances that harm your bodies. When it comes to supplements, of course, it's working along with the physician to see what supplements you may need based on your lab results or whatever. But I know that D3 is very, very helpful for persons who have cancer and even just for us overall, because we don't go out in the sun a lot. We stay indoors a lot of times, so we don't get sufficient vitamin D to really help us to be healthy. And a lot of research has shown that persons who have cancer, a lot of their vitamin D levels are very low. And so these are for the most part, and yes, and the diet. So why we really recommend a plant-based diet too is because of the amount of fiber and the importance of fiber in the diet. Fiber, I call it a super nutrient. It really helps a lot in helping to keep us healthy. And especially when it comes to not just breast cancer, but colon cancer, just keeping the body overall healthy from developing other types of cancers. As Dr. Francis mentioned earlier, when one is sort of going away, another one sort of creeping up. So you want to make sure keep your risk low for cancer as well as other health conditions.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, folks, we're pretty much out of time. But I want you to just take this 1 minute to pause and be educated on breast cancer. So just take this 1 minute and listen to this video, breast cancer education. All right. So a lot of those you have heard during the discussion. You have heard a lot of those in the discussion. So just final thoughts, and of course we're gonna go on this for the month, one way or the other. So I'd like for you to give your final thoughts. Speak to that person with breast cancer, the person who have survived breast cancer and lost family members or friends um, from breast cancer. And Dr. Frankson, you could start us off with this.
Unfortunately, we have sin that has messed up so much of how we function. We were made to live forever with God if we had just not had sin in our lives, but it is there, and the wages is that one day we will die. But you really don't have to die prematurely. You could live to a good 70, 80, 90, 100 years old, really choosing the right things. If you don't choose the right things, well, I have a little paper here. It's the list of all the cancers you could get in your life if you don't choose the right thing. Let me turn it around. If you see it continues. I got a cancer under every letter in the alphabet except for J and Q and X, Y, and Z.
Wow.
We have cancers for all of those things, from the bone cancer right down to the bile cancer, to the Wilms tumors, all kinds of some other fancy names. But those can be prevented. So let us live a healthy lifestyle. And by the way, if you find out you have a diagnosis, even if it's at a late stage, it is a part of it is that it is a spiritual disease as well as a physical and mental and so on. And I'm thinking you have had evidence here to show that really this time more than ever is your time to draw close to God, whether it's at the early stage or later stage, because he has a better plan coming up where he's going to change our sinful bodies into sinless bodies and free of cancer, diabetes, hypertension, you name it. We have a long list of those too. So what a day that will be. Don't miss that day.
Amen. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, so just to add to what Dr. Frankson said, so the thing is, if you have cancer, it doesn't have to be a death sentence, okay? So the thing is, God wants us to prosper and be in health even as our soul prospers. And as Dr. Frankson mentioned, the spiritual health is really important. And sometimes, I know Andrina mentioned about, I think it's one of the panels anyway, that sometimes these things come about to bring God glory. Okay, and sometimes you may be affected with breast cancer or an illness, and you may not know you have no family history. I mean, you can't even figure out where this disease comes from. But God allows things to happen. That sometimes look at Job in the Bible. I'm amazed by the whole story of Job. So sometimes God allows things to happen to us to draw us closer to Him, and so we can bring glory to Him, as well as to help in our own spiritual development. And so if you have cancer, if you're recovering from cancer, whatever stage you may be, the thing is to make sure put your faith, trust, and hope in God. And you want to become empowered with as much information as you can. Ask God for the strength to endure whatever He has allowed to happen to you. And of course, sometimes it's self-inflicted, so we have to ask God for forgiveness, okay? And so, and for healing of things that we may have done in the past that may have caused us to be in the current position. But the thing is to be of good cheer, be hopeful, and hope is what actually keeps us alive. Don't become distressed, discouraged. Just know that you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. And always treat your body as a temple and not as a trash can. So make those choices that will help you to live abundant life.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think just in closing, like the things if nothing else, the message I want to leave with everyone is, get familiar with what your breasts feel like today. Like if you know what your breasts feel like, then it's easier to detect when something is off. Check your breasts regularly. On another note, I want to say spiritual health is so important. Just understanding that God is the ultimate healer, and that, sometimes, His saints are called home, and that's okay too. And so I don't necessarily focus on death. I don't focus on whether I'm going to die. I focus on the quality of life that I can have right now. I give love freely. and aggressively and in abundance. And I try to receive love in the same way. I try to pay it forward every day by being there for someone who is ill or going through cancer, just being kind. You'd be surprised how healing it is to be kind. Yeah, so those are, just what I'd like to share with you guys. And maybe just one more thing is, I read a lot. I don't like to be told. I like to participate in discussions rather than be dictated to. And for me, learning about cancer, learning about alternative forms of treatment has been very powerful. Right after surgery, essentially the meal I was given was like a dairy-based meal. I didn't quite understand how could someone after a surgery be getting this kind of food. Mainstream medicine doesn't necessarily focus on nutrition. And so you have to arm yourself with that information so you can make the right decisions. So that's something I'd say, as well as just advocate for yourself. When you're not feeling well, you know your bodies, advocate for yourself, speak up, talk to your doctors, go to as many doctors that you need to go to get someone to listen. Yeah, so thank you so much for having me, and for everyone for listening.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the three of you for coming and giving this month this kind of kickoff. Awareness is goal. And that's what happened here today. And the wealth of knowledge that you have shared collectively, it helps me to better appreciate what other persons that I know now are going through, and what other persons would have gone through. And it helps us here on Zoom Up Live to be able to say, guess what, this is something that we need to do more in terms of bringing awareness, not only for treatment but prevention, and also for, as you say, the process of recovery. And you have enlightened us, and Andrina, as it relates to recovery, because as I said, it's not get up, hand fix, let's go, but it is a life that you will have to live now. That is what recovery is. And Shandira, as you said, when you talk about the health process and what you have to eat, what you put on and in your body is very much necessary, so not to come out of remission. And wow, Dr. Frankson, so much wealth of knowledge in terms of what is out there. And as a medical doctor, and saying this, that you guys treat cancer with love. I think that means a lot. It means a lot, because love is healing itself, because God is love. In other words, you treat cancer with God. And the song says, there is no cancer that will have the victory, because God is the cure. Again, thank you so much for coming, panelists. We'll chit chat just a little bit after. And thank you so much, viewers, for tuning in, family, tuning in to Zoom Up Live this weekend. We know that you could have been so many other places that is demanding your attention, but you are here, and we just want to say thank you from the depths of our heart. Please remember, if you have questions, if there are persons even with cancer or some affiliation with cancer that you say, man, I've heard this story before and I would like for the world to hear it, send us a message. at zoomoplive@gmail.com. Or you could just go over to our website, zoomoplive.org, and you could just send us a personal message through our profile reservation. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and if you're watching on YouTube, please remember to subscribe. We're looking forward to making sure that you get all the latest notification as we go live and as we share our content. So remember, God is the cure, and until next week, ta-ta from Zoom Up Live.